presented by Miller Lite. Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith. And as always, this is where we take questions from you. So if you're not already watching on the Facebook page, you can head on over there and leave us a question in the comments section. I'm sure we're going to have plenty of questions today, considering we had an entire draft since our last one of these shows, plenty for us to be talking about. So I figured as we give people a chance to start submitting some of those questions, easiest way to do is tee you up. What do you think of our draft class? What are the things that stick out to you about it? And especially when we had talked so much about what we thought the Bucs would do, what their goals would be, what did it seem like their main focuses were in terms of the things they were after in that draft?
Yeah, I mean, the story's been the same for weeks now, that with all of the guys the Bucs were able to bring back in free agency, they went into it with no glaring needs, which is really, really rare. I mean, the Bucs had a pretty good roster at this time a year ago, but still very much needed a right tackle, and everybody knew that. So this one, they could really go in any direction they wanted. That being said, I don't think you ever truly get away from needs in a draft. I'm not sure if the Buccaneers did, followed needs or just managed to hit them while picking best player available. But if you look at some of the guys, like take the two inside linebackers that we took on the third day, KJ Britt and Grant Stewart, there was very little depth behind Levante David and Devin White. You had Kevin Minter, and that was it. And usually you have about 5 of those guys, and they help you a lot on special teams. And I think these guys will do that right away. Even Joe Tryon, I mean, that's our first round pick, and I'm sure that was probably a best player available thing. But we needed more depth rotationally. And Robert Hainsey, they wanted to develop a guy that can fill in either inside or outside. I even think that they wanted to get a punt return option, which they did with the wide receiver. So I don't know. I think whether by design or not, we actually did hit some, say, middling needs on the depth chart.
Okay. Todd had asked about what you thought their motivation was specifically about Kyle Trask in terms of which quarterback they ended up drafting, when they drafted a quarterback, just what we feel like his role could be moving forward with this team and what the Bucs thought of him.
Well, I think the Bucs thought very highly of him because, as expected, they didn't try to get in on the first round quarterbacks, and they really would have had to make a very dramatic trade to even do that. So I don't think the Bucs were ever targeting a first-round quarterback, and most quarterbacks that get taken, especially pretty high in the first round, they're expected to play pretty dang soon. And I don't think the Buccaneers were looking for a quarterback that you'd want to put on the field because they're committed to Tom Brady for at least the next 2 seasons. But on day 2, there were 3 quarterbacks that were widely considered guys who would probably come off the board in the 2nd and 3rd round. And in addition to Kyle Trask, it was Mond from Texas A&M and Davis Mills from Stanford. The Buccaneers took the first one of those 3, and then the other 2 went very soon, like the next couple picks after that. So I think it's pretty clear they got the one they wanted. If they were the 3rd one in this run, then you wouldn't know, did they really want Davis Mills? But they ended up with Kyle Trask. So they got the guy they wanted. The deal with Kyle is that he had to wait a long time to get to play football. He was a backup at his high school to Derek King. And then he had to wait a long time at Florida to get his shot. And then when he did, he was fantastic, but you still don't have a huge body of evidence. But that was the case with a lot of quarterbacks this year. So I think it's a guy that they really see a lot. They like a lot of his traits. They like him from the neck up, as they said before the draft. And but they have plenty of time to see if they can develop him into Tom Brady's successor.
Okay, and then related to that, Richard had asked, is there room for BlaineGabbert to come back now with all this? That we know we have, Tom Brady and Ryan Griffin, and now you've drafted Kyle Trask. Do you see BlaineGabbert coming back?
Yeah, I would have guessed that anyway, but that was pretty much directly addressed by, I can't remember if it was Jason, I think it was Bruce, who said they do want to bring BlaineGabbert back if they can make that happen. So, the team Brain Trust has already said that, so I don't have to guess at this one. And yeah, you usually take 4 quarterbacks to training camp. So if BlaineGabbert were to return, I think what you'd end up with is a situation where obviously you're keeping Tom Brady and you almost certainly are keeping Kyle Trask. So then the other 2, him and Ryan Griffin, Blaine and Ryan Griffin, are sort of battling to see who would be the veteran backup to Tom and probably the number 2 guy during the season.
That's interesting. Asher had asked, do you think that Ryan Succop has the kicking position secured, or do you think there will still be some competition for him coming this year?
I don't think they're going to try to bring in competition for him. I could see them bringing in a leg, a camp leg. I guess it would strictly be competition, but probably that guy's not expected to beat him out. He just helps you distribute the kicking a little bit more. But I know from inside the building that bringing Ryan Succop back was a surprisingly high priority for this team. So I think he's got it pretty much secured.
And how many of these draft picks do you see having the chance to, earn a helmet on game day, actually not only make the roster, but have a chance to be contributing on Sundays?
Yeah, it's a little surprising to say this, but I think all 7 of them could make the 53-man roster. Obviously the day 3 guys are the ones that are the biggest question marks, but all have potential impact on special teams and were drafted with that in mind. So even if you don't see anything in training camp that makes you think they're going to start right away, if they are shining on special teams, they got a shot. And that also gives them a shot to be active on game days. So I don't think it's likely that Kyle Trask would be. So maybe that's -1 there. And I think Robert Hainsey, early in his career, he could be active because now you usually keep up 8 offensive linemen as opposed to when you usually kept up 7 before, because that allows you to keep up 48 guys instead of 47 on game day. Because otherwise, with the starting 5 intact, and Aaron Stinney and Josh Wells would probably be your top reserves inside and outside. That doesn't really leave a spot. Robert Hainsey seemingly would have to beat one of those 2 guys out, but maybe he's active on game day. So you could have up to 6 of them, especially if Jalen Darden wins the punt return job.
And then Mitch had asked, which draft pick do you see having the most upside?
Well, I mean, I'll do 2 answers here because the obvious one is the first round pick, but that's probably too simple of an answer. He's probably looking for something else. But Joe Tryon has, I think, a lot to develop in terms of his pass rush moves with, working with JPP and Shaq Barrett and Casey Rogers and Coach Lowe and everybody. I think he's got a lot. He made a big impact in college, largely with his power moves. So if he could develop a bigger toolkit of pass rush moves, and I think he has the capability to do so, then you could get a lot more out of him. But to give a less obvious answer, I might go with Jalen Darden, just because it seems strange to pick a guy at the receiver position when we have so many of them already. We're loaded there and it's hard to find targets. But as John Spytek explained, Jalen Darden is a different sort of receiver than we have right now. You got Scotty Miller, but he's more of a straight line, fast guy, get down the field. Whereas Jalen Darden really is fantastic. This is what John Spytek loves about him the most, at getting the ball in his hand and then making guys miss. He told me right after the draft, we drafted him, that he could catch the ball near the sideline, have 3 defenders around him, and somehow get away from him. And we don't have a guy exactly like that right now. And, he could really develop into something special down the road, I think.
I like that. Yeah, he's going to be fun to watch. All right. Our next question was, what type of rotation do you think the running backs will have with the addition of Giovanni Bernard?
Yeah, it's a little early to know the answer to that one. I don't mean that as a cop-out, but, there's a lot of questions there, because it was pretty clear for the majority of the season, for instance, that Ronald Jones was your number 1 back. And I think he got better results for most of the year than Leonard Fournette. But then after Leonard Fournette really came on at the end and in the playoffs, I'm even wondering how the distribution between those 2 go. And then, after those 2 last year, there weren't a lot of snaps left for anybody else. I mean, Keyshawn Vaughn every now and then got opportunities, and basically LaShawn McCoy was hardly used after the first 3 or 4 weeks. So if they're going to get something out of Giovanni Bernard, and particularly his pass catching, that's going to have to be distributed a little bit different. And I don't think we know the answer to that yet. I'd be surprised if the coaches know the answer to that yet.
Okay, well, that's going to do it for us on this edition of Buccaneers Insider Live, presented by Miller Lite. Thanks for all those amazing questions, as always. And we'll be back here next Wednesday morning again at 10 a.m. So be thinking of all those other draft questions we weren't able to get to this morning, and we'll see you then.